What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and last night I had the pleasure of drafting with my little brother for his home league. And when I say little brother, he's a sophomore in high school, so it's not like I'm literally taking little kids' lunch money. They're 15, 16 years old. It was on ESPN. Obviously, being the best big brother in the world, I drafted him an absolute behemoth. Just look at this squad. We started our first four picks with Kamara, Ridley, Justin Jefferson, Joe Mixon. It was a 10-team league, but we just absolutely wiped the floor with that league. And the craziest thing is the wild ADP values you see later on in that draft. I got Rondale Moore super late. I got Terrace Marshall super late. We see some wild values at ADP. And it makes me remember that, like, when we're in this and, we're all decently sharp, we're in the dynasty community, we're playing fantasy all year round. When we go back to our home leagues and play with either your work buddies, the guys you hang out at the water cooler with, or your buddies from high school, that's what my home league is, your buddies from college, it's a lot softer. Not a lot of them know the names of the younger players. Like last year, I called out Antonio Gibson, Brandon Ayuk, shameless self-plug. Those are two of my biggest calls I've ever had. And I was saying those are guys you need to target in your home leagues because they're going way too late in these ESPN, Yahoo, fantasy football drafts. So today, after looking at that ESPN ADP from yesterday, hopping in a draft with my little brother, I wanted to hop on here and give a breakdown of which players at each position I think are going egregiously too low in ESPN fantasy drafts. And if you guys like this video, if this gets, I don't know, like 100 likes, I'll do another one of these, but for Yahoo. Now, without further ado, let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm pretty cool.
Now, first up, we're going to talk about Trey Sermon. He is going off the board. We're going to use underdog ADP. There's people on there using real money. It's the sharpest ADP out there. So if you're going to hop on and do mock drafts and you want to get better, go on to Underdog Fantasy Football. Use code RON when you deposit $10. You get $25 for free. You can hop in like 7 drafts. You can see who the Sharks are actually taking. Like I said, Trey Sermon is going at the 702 as the RB27. On ESPN, he is going as the 12-12 as the RB40. That's just a casual 5 rounds of value there. Nothing crazy. And again, these rookies are going to be wild values in your home league. Trey Sermon has no business going in the 12th round of a fantasy football league, and I don't even love Trey Sermon. I wasn't high on Trey Sermon coming out, but the 12th round, this was a running back handpicked by Kyle Shanahan in the 3rd round of the NFL draft, and he has some crazy upside in year 1. He's a perfect target if you're doing like that hero RB build and you're in a home league. You could even just kick the can and do 0 RB and have Trey Sermon as your RB1. I wouldn't even hate doing that. He's shown that he could have some huge games in college. He had 300 rushing yards against Northwestern, and then he also ran for 193 against Clemson. Not just some random team, literally Clemson. And the film guy seemed to love him. And as a guy that kind of leaned towards analytics, I like, especially with the running backs or the skill position guys, when they kind of align and they see something that I don't see. Because I'll buy into that, especially for redraft. When we're investing short term and we don't have to give a premium pick, I'm down to say, you know what? If you guys think he's good between the tackles, let's ride with it. Because the 49ers running backfield, that situation is crazy for running backs. And we just want to take a stab at it. I saw this stat on Twitter by @theFFRealist. Over the last 2 seasons, the 49ers backfield are one of only 3 backfields to average 30 or more touches on a per game basis. Over the last 2 seasons, they are only one of 2 backfields to finish in the top 5 in fantasy points by the running back position. So teams usually draft running backs to replace their older running backs. When you have a spot like the 49ers, when they have all of these fantasy points to give to their running backs, they just kind of, split it around between a bunch of running backs where there's a committee, but they kind of ride the hot hand. Mostert has had fantasy relevant weeks. Jerick McKinnon had a couple good spike weeks last year. I remember starting JaMychal Hasty in a couple leagues. Trey Sermon is brought in by Kyle Shanahan to be that guy. I know they have Raheem Mostert, but there's a chance that he brought him in to be their number 1 guy. When you spend a 3rd round draft pick on him, and Raheem Mostert, he's getting a little bit older. I want to say he's like 28, 29. He wasn't spent a high draft pick by the 49ers. They don't have a lot invested into him. We want to take that shot on Trey Sermon late because that has a lot of upside. We also haven't seen it yet. We don't actually know how good he is. He could go out there and just be an absolute dog. The analytics don't really love him, but we also didn't love Chase Claypool, and he went out in year 1 and then absolutely crushed it. And what gets me really excited about Trey Sermon is that he fits this late round running back breakout criteria that JJ Zacharyson talked about on his podcast. And he said that late round running backs, or like late to mid round running backs, like past, like in like the 7 to 10 round range, when there's an RB1 that's going in that range and then an RB2 close behind him. So like maybe one running back in the 7th, one running back in the 9th. that RB1 that's going in the 7th is the guy who usually breaks out big, and that's exactly where Trey Sermon's going. So he goes ahead of Mostert on underdog, and that makes him a great pick because you're getting him at a discount in your home league. He's a rookie. He has that upside, and then he also has that criteria that JJ Zachariason outlined. Next up, I want to talk about Trey Lance, and I think he's the perfect late-round QB candidate on ESPN. He's going on ESPN at the 1409 as the QB 22 right now. And on underdog, he's going at the 1005 as the QB 13. We're getting 4 rounds of value here because he's a rookie. People don't actually know who he is. But this is going to be a common theme. These rookies and second-year players are going to be massive values in your home league because the casual football fan doesn't keep up with the draft. They don't keep up with the new names. And let's talk about Trey Lance because he has the ability to just go crazy this year. And I have been a big Justin Fields guy all offseason. I've been banging the drum for Justin Fields. The thing is, Justin Fields actually goes ahead of Trey Lance on ESPN, and he's kind of the consensus. He's like the QB 18, so he's not as great as a value. The thing about Trey Lance is he's that perfect Konami code QB. You know, that guy who rushes for a lot of yards, gives you the rushing yards, the rushing touchdowns. And he had 1,100 rushing yards and 14 TDs in 16 games, which is wild. And to put that in perspective, Kyler Murray, another quarterback that's that Konami code guy that rushes for a lot of yards in the NFL, he had 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns in his 1 year as a starter. So right about even 1,000 yards, 12 plus touchdowns. He has that kind of fantasy upside. And we want those Konami code rushing upside QBs because 1 rushing touchdown is 6 points and 1 passing touchdown is 4 points. And I think 1 rushing yard is like 0.1 points, and I want to say 1 passing yard is like 0.04 points. So you want to have as much rushing from these quarterbacks, especially from the late quarterbacks. It can make up for anything that Trey Lance is lacking in passing upside through rushing. That's how Jalen Hurts, a guy that was passing at like under 60% completion percentage and wasn't that great, was a QB1 in fantasy in his 3 starts because his rushing upside was just so crazy. And on that note, Trey Lance could just be a really good passer in the NFL in his first year. He threw for 28 touchdowns and no interception in that one season where he's a full starter. He goes 3rd overall, selected by Kyle Shanahan, and he's surrounded by a great offensive line. He has George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk to throw to. He's just got a lot of weapons. And it really just comes down to Trey Lance, how many games he's going to start. He would probably be in like high-stakes leagues, like a top 10, top 8 quarterback if you knew he was going to start week 1. And I think that he's going to start sooner rather than later. In a recent Roto World blurb, they said Lance has reportedly outperformed the veteran in camp as well, attacking the team's defense at every level of the field, including on the ground. All signs point to the rookie transitioning into a featured role much earlier than San Francisco's week 6 bye. So you're going to get him. I mean, obviously this isn't gospel. Like, it's not a lock that he's going to be the starting quarterback by the week 6 bye, but I think that that's probably about right. I'd say probably he sits out the first 3, 4, 5, 6 games, but Kyle Shanahan's already seen what he's gotten from Jimmy Garoppolo. That's a known commodity at this point, and Jimmy Garoppolo has been holding the offense back. They made that Super Bowl run, and Jimmy Garoppolo still couldn't make it happen. I think Trey Lance gets in sooner rather than later. I would grab Trey Lance in like the 13th round of your home league, and then I would maybe pair him up with like a Kirk Cousins, a Derek Carr, you know, one of those Ryan Fitzpatrick, one of those unsexy quarterbacks that you can stream for the first couple weeks, and then you get Trey Lance to come in there and just absolutely light it up for you. That brings us to our wide receiver on this list, and it's my boy T. Higgins. I didn't even know that this was happening. I didn't know the kind of disrespect that we're seeing for T. Higgins. Don't get me wrong, I love Brandon Ayuk, but they have Brandon Ayuk ahead of T. Higgins on ESPN ADP, and that's kind of what it looks like on ESPN ADP. I've seen that on Sleeper ADP. I love Brandon Ayuk, but saying for redraft he's a better option than T. Higgins is wild. He's going at the 6'10", T. Higgins, the 6'10", as the wide receiver 31 on ESPN. Underdog has him as the 4'10", as the wide receiver 22. That's much more reasonable. T. Higgins is my favorite wide receiver target this year, and it's pretty wild. You can get him in the late 6th on ESPN. I'm actually higher than Underdog ADP. Underdog ADP has him in the late 4th, like I said. I have him as a late 3rd. That's how much I love T. Higgins. Now let's look back at why I'm in love with T. Higgins and what he did in year 1. He was the wide receiver 27 through 9 games with Joe Burrow, on pace for 76 catches, 1,118 yards, and 7 touchdowns over that span. That's pretty good for a rookie. And literally, if he did just that at the wide receiver 31 price tag, he would pay off at his ESPN ADP. He would be the wide receiver 27. But as we know, here's the thing. You can't just copy and paste what rookie wide receivers did last year to the next year, because we know those sophomore wide receivers, they see a big bump in year 2. And I know they brought in Jamar Chase, but T. Higgins is going to get his in 2021. I think it's going to be T. Higgins as the alpha in 2020, and then probably the passing of the torch to Jamar Chase in 2021. But I still think T. Higgins is going to be great. And T. Higgins had a 20.2% target share last year as a rookie. We know that usually jumps up in year 2. I think that he'll be in the 25% target share range in year 2. And we're going to expect to see T. Higgins to improve, and this offense is going to be really modern. Zach Taylor loves to pick up the pace, run high tempo, and get the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands. They passed the ball last year at the 4th highest rate in neutral game scripts, which means that the Cincinnati Bengals passing the ball a bunch last year wasn't garbage time, them being down by a lot of points and having a bad defense. It's because that's Zach Taylor's scheme. Zach Taylor wants to pass the ball. He wants to run at a fast pace, and that's why Burrow had 40.4 pass attempts per game, which at a 17-game pace, we're looking at 689 targets. So at a 20% target share, just what T. Higgins had last year, that put him at 137 targets, which is 8 targets per game, which would have been the wide receiver 17 in 2020. Then if we bump that up to 25% target share, which I think is his ceiling, we'd be looking at 172 targets or 10.1 targets per game, which would have been the wide receiver 4 in 2020. His floor is top 24 wide receiver. You're getting him in ESPN as a wide receiver 3. And if he gets that target boost, if he gets that target share increase because he's a solid player, he's a skilled player, he also could be more efficient because Jamar Chase could take, some of that lid off the defense where the safeties are kind of shifting towards him, and you have a healthy Tyler Boyd and a healthy Joe Burrow. You could see some crazy things. If you give 10.1 targets per game to T. Higgins, we're looking at a top 12 wide receiver there, which is crazy upside. Then our last target of the day is Tyler Higbee. I actually ended up drafting this team for my little brother, or I ended up drafting this player for my little brother. Tyler Higbee, I don't even like that much, but on Underdog, he's going at the 905 as the tight end 8. He's a top 10 tight end. He is going on ESPN at the 1401 as the tight end 17. This one's wild. We're literally getting a top 10 tight end in the 14th round. In ESPN, most of these leagues are 15, 16 rounds. And this is another case of that video I made last week or 2 weeks ago, where I talked about how players can burn us, but it doesn't really matter. A player burning you last year doesn't really affect you in that next coming year. And I think that's what we're seeing with Tyler Higbee. And I get that we're coming off a down year in 2020. He didn't look great. He was like the tight end 22 or something pretty bad, but he was just a tight end 10 in 2019, which isn't bad at all. That's startable. And in 2020, I don't think it was too much of a talent / like efficiency type of problem. I think that it was a volume problem. The Rams didn't pass as much with Goff. They kind of relied on the run game with Cam Akers. And Gerald Everett also took a lot of targets away. He was playing as that second tight end in that 12 personnel type set. Gerald Everett ended up taking away 62 targets, which is a lot for tight ends. And then you have Tyler Higbee, who despite a down year, he was still really efficient. He was 7th in yards per target. He was 11th in yards per route run. Being top 12 in those, but then finishing outside the top 20 tight ends in fantasy points per game is a good sign. So then we know that he's still efficient. The talent is still somewhat there. Obviously, I know Tyler Higbee isn't some god at tight end, but that's still pretty good. Now he comes into an improved situation. They bring in Matthew Stafford. He's going to replace Jared Goff. There's going to be much more efficient offense. They're going to pass it deeper. They're going to score more touchdowns. It's going to be a beautiful, beautiful offense. Lock it in for top 5 scoring offense. Sean McVay's going to get that ship going. Then you have Gerald Everett leaving. Gerald Everett goes to the Seahawks. There's no backup tight end I'm scared about. I mean, Jacob Harris is interesting in LA, but I think that's more of a dynasty stash because those guys that convert from wide receiver to tight end, they're usually projects. So it's going to take a while. Darren Waller, it didn't happen until like his 5th, 6th year. Now, I know that he did have, his problems or his off-the-field problems, but the point stands true. You're not going to really see a rookie wide receiver to tight end, like converted guy, just go off in year 1 and eat Tyler Higbee's lunch money. So I think with Everett gone, with Stafford in, I think that Higbee can finish as a back-end tight end 1. I have him as like my tight end 9, tight end 10. And if you can get him at a tight end 17 price tag as like one of your last picks in the draft, that's a huge steal. And a crazy stat that I found is the splits with Higbee, with Gerald Everett playing and with Gerald Everett not playing. In the 5 games that Higbee has played without Gerald Everett since 2019, he has scored 23.2 points per game, averaging 7.8 catches per game and 94 receiving yards per game in that span. Now, I don't expect him to be that because that would be literally outscoring Travis Kelce, but it's a positive sign. It means that he plays better when Gerald Everett's gone. Then you bring in Matthew Stafford. I think Tyler Higbee is going to be a great value. And if you can get him late in your fantasy leagues on ESPN, on Yahoo or whatever, that's a great steal. Because then you can wait on that elite tight end. Instead of having to pay up for a Waller Kittle early, you can take a Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins in that spot, and then you can just get Higbee later on. Now that's going to do it for today. Let me know if there's any values, like crazy values you've been seeing on ESPN or Yahoo. Make sure you go give the video a like. If this video does well, if we get like 1,000 views on it, I'll come out and do a Yahoo one or a sleeper one, whatever you guys want to see. I'm just not sure if this is something that's really interesting to you guys. But yeah, man, today's a big day. This is the day of the live draft that we're going to be doing for the channel. Now, this video is going to come out for another like 10 to 14 days. So don't get too excited. It's not going to come out until Where the aiming date is going to be not this Sunday, but the Sunday after that. I'm getting all my high school buddies. We're meeting up. We're doing a live draft, so that should be really fun. Figured I'd record a video before I go to give you guys for this week. Make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. I don't know if I said that already. Follow me at @RonStore_ on Twitter. Make sure you go down below. Join the Discord. We're going to be running redraft leagues in there, like subscriber redraft leagues in there very soon. Probably literally this week. Now, I love you guys. Let's go win this chip. Let's go draft a super team. Let's go. I'll see you guys in the next one.
Thirsty, thirsty, trying to choose. I mean, I know I'm critical. My nitty bag, my kitty boots. I got the juice, I got the juice.
Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my